There's a lot of information on the internet regarding grief. You can find information about the loss of a parent, the loss of a sibling, the loss of a pet, but there's not a lot of information out there regarding the loss of a service dog. I had my first grand mal seizure back in 2014 and was diagnosed with epilepsy shortly after that. The moment that I received my diagnosis, my life changed. I didn't grow up with seizures, so I didn't know what a life with having them would look like. I couldn't drive anymore, so I dropped out of college. I withdrew from any semblance of a social life. But that was a time of overwhelming loneliness that I had not experienced before. And I discovered that dogs could be trained to mitigate life with seizures. So I contacted Service Dogs Alabama and talked to them about their program, and they encouraged me to apply to be a client. And after submitting an application with so many doctor's notes and referrals and waiting about a year, I was matched with Earl. Earl became like an appendage. He went everywhere with me, and he never failed to respond when I collapsed. He went with me to weddings, to the grocery store, to doctor's appointments, to jury duty. We gave speeches to large groups about service dogs. He was a perfect travel buddy. I finally re-enrolled in college and made friends because everyone wanted to get to know him. I gained so much confidence, not only in my ability to re-enter society, but I generally became a more outgoing person. I'm pretty sure most of my friends loved him even more than they loved me. We were a we. It wasn't a Mary Ryan and her service dog thing, but we were a collective. He was a medical device, sure, but he was also like a child and a caretaker, a protector, a hype man, and a best friend. And then, just like I was after my epilepsy diagnosis, suddenly Earl wasn't himself. The grief of losing him was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. First, I mourned the loss of my best friend and caretaker. A few days later, I realized I no longer felt comfortable going out in public alone, so I mourned the loss of my independence and security. I felt halved, like this huge piece of me was just gone. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I have this whole community to break the news to. He meant so much to so many people, and I have to be strong enough to talk about him with these people who loved him like I did. You have to mourn with this whole village of people who knew and loved him. I called Service Dogs Alabama and cried with the founder of the organization for almost an hour. I called my parents, who felt like they had lost a grandchild. I couldn't bear to call my friends who knew and loved him, so I made a post about his passing on social media. I felt selfish doing that, but I didn't have the strength to have that conversation more than a couple of times. I thought when I received his ashes that I would restart the grieving process all over again, but I felt like we were finally reunited in a way. Don't get me wrong, I cried for hours when I picked them up, but it was this sense of relief to have him with me again. My house is basically a shrine to him. I had his vest and collar mounted in a shadow box, and I have a portrait of him in the kitchen so that he can always watch me while I'm cooking. Like a typical lab, he wanted to taste everything I ate. It seemed only appropriate to mount his picture there. My story is not prescriptive. I can't tell anyone what to do with these huge, overwhelming, complex emotions or how long the bereavement period will be. But I created this project so that no one will have to go through that painful time alone. It's nearly impossible to find information out there regarding the loss of a service dog. I found plenty of information out there about the loss of a pet and a few blog posts here and there with some personal stories, but they really weren't enough. I didn't need a timeline about how long my sadness would last per se, but I just felt like I needed some framework for what I was going through. I felt like I needed some support during one of the most difficult times in my life, and I hope that this film can be that for someone else.
Earl gave me my life back. He gave my life meaning again just by being who he was.
And I pray that in sharing my mourning process and crying on camera and revealing the weird forms my grief has taken, that I'm returning that favor.